Hello and welcome back to sax.co.uk. A few years ago, my friend Jim made this amazing video picking out a bright alto saxophone setup. And I thought I would surprise him by picking him out another saxophone setup, but this time focusing on the darker side of the alto saxophone. For too long, we thought about the alto as being this bright, angelic singing instrument, but sometimes it can get moodier and darker and a little bit sexier. And that's what I want to focus on today. I'm going to pick him out two different setups. One budget, one professional. We're going to choose two saxophones and two mouthpieces and have a lot of fun doing it. So let's go and choose some saxophones. The hardest part about this process is going to be choosing a student dark saxophone. As we have already covered on the channel, the mouthpiece is going to have the biggest overall effect on the tone, but the saxophone does play its part. And student saxophones have very, very similar profiles as they're designed for students to be as easy to play as possible. So that's why my colleague Jamie and I, we went into a room, played a bunch of saxophones, and we came to the conclusion that the Buffet 100 is going to be the saxophone for us. Now, compared to the other student saxophones, the Buffet's got a little bit of extra weight to it, which you can feel on the bottom end of the sound specifically. It's got a bit more body. It's got a bit more warmth in the bottom end. And that translates again to the middle and upper register where it feels a bit fluffier. That sound around the edges has just that bit of lovely warmth and texture that you're looking for in that really velvety, dark tone. On top of that, this saxophone is, at the time of recording, under £1,000. In fact, it's under £800. So it's at very good value for money in getting a robust saxophone that's going to give you that dark response. When it comes to the professional alto saxophone setup, I was a bit spoilt for choice. I was thinking maybe I could choose a Selma Paris or a solid silver Yannick Sauer, but in the end, I decided to go with a P.Mauriat. The P.Mauriats have got these big and wonderful warm sound. So from there, it was deciding whether to go for the 67 or the System 76, which is what I decided to go with in the end. The System 76, it's just got that little bit more warmth. It's got that little bit more body and a little bit more fluff around the edges of the sound. It's still got lots of projection thanks to the flared bell and generally being a Mauriat, but there's just something about it that's got that lovely cuddly tone. That's what we're looking for when setting up a dark alto saxophone setup. Including that, it comes in the dark finish. Perfect. So, as I've already said, the mouthpiece is going to be the biggest aspect in choosing a dark alto saxophone setup. And what we're going to want to look at is getting a large chambered alto saxophone mouthpiece. Now, unlike the tenor saxophone, there are a few less large chamber alto pieces. But for the budget setup, there's no better place to start than an Otto Tone Edge. Otto, iconic brand across all of the saxophones, and that includes the alto. So you've got a little rollover baffle on there, and it goes into quite a large chamber. Excellent mouthpiece, nice and dark. It's going to give it that full, fluffy, lovely sound. However, for the professional tippity-top range of a mouthpiece, we're going to look for something slightly different, maybe something a bit more boutique, which is why I want to have a look at the Aizen Jazzmaster. Now, I personally have always adored Aizen mouthpieces. So they are handmade Japanese mouthpieces, and they are beautifully, beautifully crafted. Now, the Jazzmaster has a medium-large chamber. So the chamber is not quite as big as the Otto, but it's still going to give you that big, fluffy sound. The difference here is that it's got a much less steep rollover baffle. It's very, very shallow. It's almost straight, which is going to give it that really dark sound. And it should sound beautiful on that Mauriat. So now that we've got our budget and professional saxophone setup, it's time to take it down to Jim. And now instead of him coming up to London, we're going to go and see him in the bigger Crowborough studio. So let's go together. So we're now here in Crowborough, and I am here with Jim. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Michael.
So let's start with the more affordable setup that I've pointed out to you. So the Buffet 100 and the Otto Tone Edge. So what is your verdict of my first suggestion?
Okay. Well, I quite like it, actually. It is a nice setup that you've selected here, so well done, first of all.
Yes!
So what I'm getting with this is it's a warm sound for a student instrument, and they can tend to err on the brighter side. Sometimes student instruments, they can have that slightly nagging nasal sound a little bit, some of them, but this one has got a nice warmth to it, a certain fluffiness. But I'm going to now migrate onto the mouthpiece when I mention fluffiness, because Otto links are renowned for producing a very warm sound, if a little bit on the fluffy side, which is actually quite a nice trait if you're looking for that sound, you know, that slightly more Desmondy, Paul Desmond kind of sound. And I definitely felt that sort of vibe with this setup overall. So I think, yeah, the combination of a warm sounding buffet instrument and this slightly fluffyish sounding link, but with a nice kind of core to it and a nice overall warmth, I think it was quite a good combo. What I feel it might not do as well, perhaps, is really project. You know, when you give it some, it doesn't, the sound doesn't sort of transform into that that harder hitting sound with sort of more overtones and all the rest of it.
It's kind of a bit one-dimensional.
Yeah, it sort of retains that warmth of sound, which might be, again, what you're looking for. But I would say overall, you know, the aim as a sax player should be to have a certain amount of flexibility in your palette so that you can, you know, transition through to these other sounds. And this one here just felt like it sort of wanted to stay in that area, if you like.
Amazing. So with the professional setup, I had a bit more flexibility, I had a bit more choice, so I was a little bit nervous putting this one together. So Jim, what's your verdict on my professional setup, the P.Mauriat System 76 and an Aizen Jazzmaster?
Yeah. Well, I've always loved the P.Mauriat horns, and the System 76 I love because you've got this wonderful warmth and a really nice core at the same time. Combination of those two things, brilliant. And yeah, I've always loved these mouthpieces as well. The Aizen mouthpieces are brilliant mouthpieces. What I immediately feel with this setup as an elevation beyond this setup over here is that there is so much more sort of flexibility in the sound and response as well. Even though it's a dark sound, and I felt that I could really manipulate the sound, particularly in the sort of middle and lower reaches, I could really just relax on it and I could hear all these lovely qualities going on. I felt that there was this possibility to really push it and change it and manipulate it, as I say, as I move around through the dynamic ranges. I didn't maybe demonstrate it so much in the little clip there, but when you really push it at the top end of things, it can really poke out, and it can actually have quite a cut to it. I know the whole exercise within the context of this video is to talk about a dark alto sound, right? But yeah. And it largely does do that, this mouthpiece. It's definitely got that as its sort of you know, majority thing going on with it, but it has that potential to really kick out.
Would you say that that pokiness, that extra bit of kick out is what elevates that mouthpiece over, say, a standard Otto link, that ability to push up?
I think that's one aspect of it, but even within, when you're just playing the sort of medium dynamic stuff, there's a quality in the sound that I just really enjoy, just a tad more than the slightly fluffier thing that I was getting, albeit, as I've just explained, it's really lovely on the buffet there. But just, it feels like there's a few more vibrations. So what I'm putting into the saxophone, it feels like it's converting it. It feels like it's a little bit more aerodynamically efficient, if you like, with this one, even at the medium level. But then, just to answer your question, when you push it more, to have that ability to turn it into something else, it makes you feel like you're getting perhaps a bit more value for money. And that's not just the mouthpiece setting, but it's the sax as well. It has more depth and potential for projection at hand. So, you know, when you put all this together in a nice package, it just means that you've got overall this hugely flexible setup. So you kind of feel like you could do anything on it. You could start with a dark sound, and if you want to, if you think bright, then you could push it and go in a bright direction if that's what the musical setting requires, I suppose.
Amazing. And it also comes in a dark lacquer, so it's a perfect combination of everything. So let's just quickly touch upon some bits that we haven't mentioned here. So ligature-wise, I've decided we'd go with a Rovna Dark from both setups. When you go for a premium ligature, say a Van Doren Optimum, a Van Doren MO, or the BG Duo, what you're going to get is a ligature that allows the reed to resonate more, which is going to give you sort of more flexibility, but also kind of has a tendency of brightening the tone slightly. So Rovna Dark, nice and consistent, gives you that lovely, rich, velvety, lovely sound. Reeds-wise, have you got any advice for those wonderful people out there?
Yeah, sure. So what I was using for the comparison there was my own choice of reed, which is the reed I've used for most of these kind of video things that I do, which is the D'Addario Select Jazz reed. It just works nicely for me. I find it quite a nice flexible reed. It's got a certain amount of buzz to it, but it's got that heart to it as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use something familiar, so you're not just chucking weird stuff at me where I can't play.
Throwing things at you, yeah.
I needed to have something familiar so I could, you know, get through the whole exercise.
Yeah.
But you know, joking aside, it is a nice quality reed, of course. It's very popular with pros, the Select Jazz, because it has those things I mentioned, that dark core to it, as well as a little bit of that flexibility, that buzz there. But other reeds, when you're really trying to push more specifically in that darker direction, I would say there's a few Van Doren cuts. The traditional comes to mind. It's got a real nice heart to it. Then if we move away from, you know, the sort of the famous brands like the D'Addarios and the Van Dorens, think something like the Alexander New York
Lovely reeds, great reeds.
A very nice reed. I mean, actually all the Alexander reeds are nice, but that one's particularly dark. So it's worth experimenting because these things can change it completely. You did a beautiful reed video the other day, which I thought was great.
Watch it.
And I have to say, you know, we're not touching on it so much in this video, except for right now, but the reed is really crucial. You know, if I was to just change that reed to one of these reeds mentioned, again, it would change the whole sort of parameter again. It would move it into a different area. So vital to experiment with reeds and get that absolutely right for the, you know, musical style you're looking to play in.
Perfect. And before we finish, have you got any advice for our fine viewers out there to just, as a player, get that big, dark, lovely alto sound?
I would say, so with the alto in general, it has a tendency to have that kind of sort of twee sound, particularly in the upper reaches, and when you get to sort of octave A and above. We're often fighting as alto players with sort of trying to go against that natural, slightly thinning sound that can happen, particularly as you go higher and higher. And so in terms of technique, other than the sort of gear things we've mentioned, I always try and think about having a really open throat. So just the feeling of dropping here as opposed to tightening. Of course, we should never tighten as we go up. It's, you know, you sort of think, well, you're going higher, you need to tighten to play those notes. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But it's really the opposite. It's staying as open as possible. So you feel like you've got that sort of, you're drilling a hollow through the sound. And I could sort of feel that going on nicely with these setups here. Because I was thinking about that aspect in particular when I was trying to play those high notes in order just to expand out the sound and get that sound that you're talking about there.
Amazing, thank you so much. And thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Pop a comment below. Please let us know what setup was your favourite. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.